Thanks to Task for a very interesting submission. Yeah, I'm interested in the points you make about the health service, and I think you referred to the complexities arising from the two-tier system. So I'd be interested to hear you elaborate on that. And I mean, like, one thing that strikes me is that we certainly have that you have these complexities and inequalities, great inequalities because of the two-tier system.
The government published the enabling legislation to explain what the changes would mean in practice.
But also, we get further complexity by the fact that a lot of our health service seems to operate in different silos. I wonder if you think about that. So, like, we have bits of it run by the Bon Secours, we have bits of it run by the Sisters of Charity, we have bits of it run by the HSE, we have another bit run by somebody else. So it's hopelessly fragmented. It's not just two-tier, but it is hopelessly fragmented. And then I think there's, even within some of these hospital groups, I think there's no proper integration of even computer systems. So it's like it's been built on an ad hoc basis. And so it's really just deeply dysfunctional. But I just wonder, would you say that really the only way that would you agree that, like, we just can't, we're kind of trying to address that in a piecemeal way, rather than really doing some radical surgery, pardon the pun, to try and address it. And that we can't even begin to resolve the problem if we don't have an integrated one-tier national health service, because you've got all these silos and then you have the big gap between public and private. And I take your point about people who are on private health insurance, the sort of fear factor that drives them onto it, and then if you cut the subsidies, what happens then? But it also, I don't know if you have any comment on this, but it also strikes me that I'm not saying if you added all the bits of our health service together and properly integrated, we would have the capacity we need. But I do suspect strongly that there's significant underutilisation of capacity because of its fragmented nature and because of its two-tier nature. In other words, it always strikes me, and I'm listening to the radio and I hear ads for the Blackrock Clinic, and they say, we have an A and E too. If you come here, you won't be waiting on a trolley for 2 days. And so I think, okay, they don't have a capacity problem, but it's only if you can pay. But if you can't pay, you're going to be waiting on a trolley for 2 days. So, yeah, I'd just be interested in your comments on those. And then the other thing that I think is very interesting, you said about the expanding our housing stock and also meeting our climate goals. And if I hear you right, what you're saying is we could possibly square that circle if we use more timber in the construction of houses, because that can lock up carbon, and the development of timber products and so on could be part of a sort of ecological regeneration, which would help address climate as well. I just wonder if you have any comment on the debate then around the kind of forestry stuff that has been debated quite intensely, and the involvement of investment funds in forestry and the type of forestry model that gives you. Because certainly my view would be that if you've got investment funds that are looking essentially to make money from forestry, they're not really that bothered about developing a sustainable forestry that will positively impact on climate or enhance biodiversity, but that what you are going to get is, short rotation, monocultural, industrial forestry that is very, very bad for the climate and biodiversity. But the other side then say, oh, well, we need that because we need the timber products, and actually that industrial forestry is what you need in order to produce timber products. Now, I actually don't think you need that, but I'd just be interested in your thoughts. I think you can have a biodiverse, sustainable forestry that's continuous cover model, that's about thinning rather than clear felling, and so on. But I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on that as well. Thanks.
I think the public-private,
I think it's debatable whether or not it is actually a two-tiered system. Certainly at the moment it's more multi-tiered, like you were saying. And Cilantro Care, once it's fully put in place, will actually allow most of those tiers to disappear. There'll still be some of the fragmentation that you see within the different regional areas, the CHOs, how they're regulated, how they function, and some of it is historical, and they work quite well for the communities that they serve. However, when you look at a national level, not everyone's necessarily receiving the same type of care. But I think Cilantro Care, once we have an overarching access to primary care, will really make things a lot easier to see where the holes are, to see where more efficient decisions can be made. Because there certainly are some challenges around lack of access to IT services, for example. The fact that GPs can't transfer documents to each other, to hospitals, that's something that should be sorted out quickly, as soon as possible, to increase the access that people have and also to decrease waiting times. It's not just public and private. It's, yeah, you're right, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, on the forestry point, I suppose through our research it's come up quite a bit. Opposition to forestry, but also, and in a similar vein, opposition to wind farms and different various, I suppose, projects that we embark on towards our climate goals. I suppose when you dig a little bit deeper, my experience of it anyway, through focus groups and interviews and kind of community forums, is that people, they're not necessarily opposing the climate action, the afforestation itself. It's usually that they're opposing not having a say in what's happening and not having any ownership over local development. That's come out again and again in our people's transition work, where we try to link climate action to local development. And I suppose on the topic of monoculture, we wouldn't have specific experience on the scientific element of that, but again, it's raised by a lot of the communities that we work with. Issues around, is that actually going to benefit our climate goals?
Yeah, just one other thing. And in your vision of things, would we get rid of private health insurance altogether? I mean, personally, I'm for getting rid of private health insurance altogether. To me, it's just parasitical. But it flows from the fact that there's fear about the inadequacy of the public health system. So people feel they have to take it out literally as insurance against having to deal with being on a waiting list for years or being on a trolley for days. So if we get to the health system we need, however we get there and however quick we get there, is the end game to get rid of the private health insurance for-profit industry completely?
No. I think the goal is to get rid of the need that people feel they have for it. The fact that 46% of the population in Ireland has private health insurance is a problem. That many people don't trust the health system. And reducing that, any reduction in that, and more faith that people have in receiving healthcare and being able to access GP services, shorter waiting lists, children to get quicker diagnoses, any improvement in that area.
But I suppose my question is there a bit of chicken and egg in that? If loads and loads of money is going into, loads of resources and time and billing and, all the administration that goes with just the existence of a private health insurance sector, is that's all waste, really. I mean, it's accounted for as health spending, and we're often told Ireland has a very high level of health spending, but it's actually nothing to do with provision of frontline health service. It's really parasitical on the health services. Well, that would be my view, but I'm just wondering what you think on that.
It seems as if most other countries in Europe either have one or the other, a really strong public system, or they have privatized healthcare that's paid for by the state. So everyone has health insurance, everyone has access to primary care. It's either one or the other that seems to work really well. It's this hybrid option based off of fear that is the challenge. The fact that people have such long.
Yeah. One thing I would add is that, the aim of Launch Care is to get the private healthcare out of public hospitals, and certainly endorse that. And I would also add, the state shouldn't be subsidising private provision. If people want to go ahead and get private healthcare, that's up to them. But I don't think it should be the state that subsidises that. Regarding the costs, if you look at what country has the most expensive healthcare system in the world, it's the United States, and a lot of that is driven by administrative costs, as you say. If you look at within the European Union, Ireland, I think, is the second highest spender in terms of, as a percentage of national income after Germany. Now, this is despite the fact that we have a young population. I would take your point about some of the issues and the inefficiencies generated by the overlap between the public and private system. Another thing that I would raise is that the cost of having public services in Ireland is generally more expensive because of, shall we say, mistakes in the planning system going back many, many years. Basically, it's more expensive to service our population with public services because we've got this really spread out population, and in the case of healthcare in particular, there's been an over-reliance on hospitals. So there's a couple of different factors at play there. It's not just, we can say, the experience that we see in the US, that fully explains the inefficiencies that we have in Ireland.